depressed person, which happens quite a bit. I personally think happiness and just being, I don't know, like navigating the world where you've got a good perspective that's healthy about yourself and your relationships. And so I just don't see any data, and if someone wants to point it to me, that suggests that we should even consider looking at orientation. And again, if you showed me concrete examples that a high percentage of children raised by homosexuals had bad outcomes, before I would even take that data and say, ooh, we should restrict that, I would want to compare that to, like for like incomes and with heterosexuals, and see if that data even matters. And again, it's just my observation, but it seems like all the people that think that homosexuals shouldn't adopt kids, and even the ones that are using this example that, oh, well, a father and a mother have different parenting skills. If you were to peel that onion back further, I would guess that 99.99%, again, this would be my guess, I'd be willing to wager that those same people making that argument are all heterosexual and have negative views of gays in general.
Well, and Roger, I'll ask this question one more time. Because, you know what, I'll just make the ethical question. Because I like to see how people determine, why they believe what they believe. And of course, just so everyone understands where I'm coming from. I am a Presbyterian Christian. I do not believe in homosexuality. As a marriage, I think it's sinful. So probably every single aspect of their life I'm going to consider sinful, of course. But question to the room, question of Roger, of course, as he's a moderator. If again, a sister and a sister in a relationship as an incest, which I understand is illegal, I'm just asking the ethical question, not the legal question. Would we, if they were financially stable, in a healthy relationship, no abuse, they love children, same way as two gay women would love a child, would we allow them to adopt? And if not, I want to know why.
I would say this. I would accept, I'm not saying I would be comfortable with, but I would accept two sisters wanting to raise a family. One of them would be the legally adopted parent, and the other one would just be the parent that lives in the house. The ethical considerations or my ethical problems with their sexual relationship don't necessarily say anything about their capacity for being good parents.
I don't know. I feel like if you're willing to diddle your sister, you have no boundaries. What will you do to the damn kids?
We can't know that. That's the damn ignorance. In other words, we're making assumptions based on one set of behaviors and saying that translates to all other kinds of behaviors. I'm not sure that that's right. Then parents who smoke shouldn't be allowed to adopt children. Right? Like, how far do you want to extend it?
I don't know.
Because a lot of things.
We're comparing cigarette smoking to incest, though?
But I'm comparing, no, because I'm comparing them on a spectrum, right? In other words, if we're saying some behavior is dangerous, where do you draw the line? And a lot of things are a matter of degrees, right? So I think Keegan's question is, in the abstract, malformed, because he's not asking about degrees, he's just asking about like one particular case. So I would put the question back on Keegan. Where would you draw the line about harmful behaviors or harmful things that you might see in a family? And would you further restrict adoption rights because of those things, like smoking or alcoholism or, overeating or obesity? Where would you draw the line?
See, this is where it becomes very, very fun. I said I would be more willing to have this type of discussion, which is like maybe it's not like a full-on restriction and make it illegal, but rather a priority list. Because we don't do that right now in this nation, right? There's not a priority list.
That's not true. That's not true.
You have to fit a certain number for newborns. You have to fit a certain number of legal
Do you
standards.
have kids, Keegan? Do you have kids?
Yes. Yes.
God help them.
Yes.
God help them. Because I think you're raising them to be. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. God help all the children. God help all the children. Okay.
Okay. Well, anyways, which is that, like, I think that, not even just based off of, like, your financial standpoint, which is already a standpoint that you have to hit to adopt a newborn, and, you have to be, you have to hit certain parameters that CPS will look into, or that the adoption agencies will look into. But yeah, I mean, looking into it even further, do you smoke in the house? Is there been like drug abuse, or like you're absolutely right. Like, should we have a priority list of people who, like, hey, if you're a heterosexual couple, financially well off, no forms of alcoholism, no forms of smoking in the house, physically in shape, all these things, like, should they have a higher priority? And I would say, yeah, without a doubt. And maybe there is a restriction, maybe it is a priority list rather than just like, if you just hit these checklists, then anyone can.
So why would you, in the case, so what makes adoption different than biological birthing? Why wouldn't you say, right, that doctors and hospitals and things shouldn't permit their patients to get pregnant, right? We should vasectomize all smokers, male smokers, right? Like, so that they, right, if we're going to restrict it to, there's an inconsistency there, right? Because you're allowing for bad heterosexual parents just by the virtue of the fact that they're heterosexual, but you're not willing to have kids who need to be adopted. So what's the distinction?
Well, again, it's not that kids need, like, I don't know if you know this, I think last time I saw it was 38 to 1 newborn. I mean that there's 38 parents to every one newborn. There's a massive wait list in this country for newborns. That's why many gay parents are going to surrogacy, because they would rather not wait for it. So
I have a question that might be relevant. What percentage of parents that are going to adopt, and I mean hetero, are unable to have kids on their own?
Lots.
Right. So I think that in itself is a reason why they should take priority. There's nothing that's stopping the other group from having kids on their own if they like. I mean, I get why they wouldn't if that's, what they're attracted to, but.
Well, and as Mo just said in the beginning argument, he said this, I forget why he said this, but I mean, I agree with it, which is that you have God-given rights that when you were born, you were just given. And one of those rights, which is like a privilege, is the right to be able to have a child, to bear a child, and then also, again, to a man to inseminate a woman to have her bear a child. So, like, that's a God-given right. When you're gay, you've given away that privilege, right? I think you just don't get that privilege.
Why?
Because you can't do it. I guess.
Of course you can. No biological restriction just because I'm gay. No, absolutely not. There is no technical restriction of me activating that right just because I'm gay.
In a homosexual relationship between two men, there is. That's what I'm saying. I guess you could get.
No, but you're missing the point.
I guess
you're missing the point.
Then what's the argument?
That's exactly right.
Then why not do that and let couples that don't have kids adopt and let a child have a traditional household?
Why wouldn't we also say infertile couples then can't adopt kids?
That's right. Because they gave away their right.
Or they're just not selected. They don't have the ontological.
That's right. They're not selected. So this is just Calvinism. This is all this is.
No, let's not insult Calvinism.
Let's not
insult
go that route.
Bigoted, Caleb. That's an insult to Calvinists.
We could go that route, but then the gays can't adopt either. They're not selected either.
I mean, I don't see anything wrong with gay people adopting children.
And Marshall's a Presbyterian. Somebody just said that they were against it because they're Presbyterian, and Marshall's a good Presbyterian.
I have a different view. I support the ability to be married. I don't care whether they're gay or lesbian or transgender. It doesn't matter to me. I go to a church, however, that says if you're gay, you can come to our church, you can't be in leadership, and we won't marry you. And that's about where I stand religiously on it. I think, at least practically, there's nothing that says there's nothing to indicate gay people can't adopt children and raise them in perfectly good homes. It's happened for the United States for at least 80 or so, well, not 80, at least like 20 or so years, and we hadn't produced bad side effects. The other piece is gays have been around as long as we've been on this earth. Alexander the Great's most fearsome cavalry troop was called the Companion Cavalry. It had 2,000 men in it, and they were all gay. Every single one of them. So gayness doesn't take away. I'm not asking people
Alexander's
to
infantry was all
I
gay.
very much am with Roger. I don't think the state needs to be involved. And I think when we punish what goes on between two consenting adults who have liberty and freedom, then we're sticking our noses where it really doesn't belong.
I realize, Keegan, you don't agree with that, but that's
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
ridiculous, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
I make the argument that when people say if it's just two consenting adults, then everyone should be okay with incest. Incest should not be, other than producing gay incest, and then maybe if you're heterosexual incest, you just have to get a vasectomy or tie your tubes.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
incest and gay
with
people aren't the same.
But why not? They're two consenting adults. I'm just really confused.
well, Keegan, hold on, Keegan, are you genuinely confused by it? Because you
Yes,
just said.
I think it's a contradiction. I think it's a
Okay, well,
do this.
Well, I don't see a contradiction for people to be able to look at two separate issues and to be able to feel different ways about these two separate things. I think that there's a couple of questions here. First of all, do you believe that that homosexuality and incest are you think that those are morally and ethically just the same thing? That's your take?
Yeah, it's sexual immorality.
Got it. Well, there's a lot of sexual immorality, right? Jacking off is sexually immoral, depending on the teachings that you follow. And so I guess my question is if we're going to get so hell bent, no pun intended, on the idea of what is sexually moral, right? Then I think, what about people that have sex out of wedlock? Do you feel the same way about them as you do about people that incest?
Yes. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's the same sexual morality. Now jacking off actually is debatable. It can be debatable, but these three things that you labeled other than that are not debatable among the church.
Got it. So it's your belief that we should put incest and homosexuality and sex before marriage all in the same bucket because of a religious belief that you hold?
No, I'm asking. I'm saying I'm basing my ethical understanding of sexual morality as a religious understanding. I'm asking other people how, when they say it's two consenting adults, how are they ethically getting to that position when they're
The
against
government.
incest?
That's how.
And if someone can get, other than the government, of course, or how society deems it's,
Also, they're not the same. When in one relationship, you can reproduce children that are all fucked up, i.e. King Tut and his kids.
But I'm saying, let's say gay incest. I'm not even saying heterosexual incest. Let's say gay incest. Why would you be against gay incest? Ethically.
Because it's illegal. Like I'm not having
Because the ethical.
I think the same moral way as you do about it. If it were legal, it would be a different conversation. It is not, in fact, legal unless you are in the state of Alabama, in which case you can still marry and fuck your first cousin, which is disgusting.
The ethics here, Kagan, have to do with that, right? The symmetry breaker is that they're related, they're family members, right? That's the ethical breaker of the logjam, right? And that's the difference. And that's where you make that people might make that ethical determination. But I think Roger is right to point out that the consenting adult umbrella doesn't cover all the same kinds of sexual relationships. And it would be kind of a mistake to consider sex before marriage and incest to be of similar moral weight or similar moral transgression.
Well, I could just make a completely new argument, which is that if two sisters who grew up in completely different households, never knew each other, but knew that they were sisters, and then they were consenting adults and wanted to get married, would anyone be ethically opposed to that? And at the end of the day, what I realize is a lot of people who believe just that two consenting adults can be in any type of engagement that they want to be in, always tend to just go, yeah, I'm for incest at this point. Which then makes me.
That's a straw
On
man.
a Thursday
That's a straw
afternoon, these
man.
fucking people are debating incest.
No, but that's a huge straw man.
Gay marriage was legalized in 2013, and you haven't gotten people saying, let's fuck horses.
I understand. I'm just asking people on an ethical basis,
I'm
not
not
on a
agreeing with
legal
that.
basis. On a legal
The problem, Keegan, is that your ethics, and it's not a problem that you have ethics informed by religion, but you think that all ethics, right, that the only ethical framework is religious, and that's a problem here because it's not the only ethical framework. So when you ask about ethics, you think you're asking something that's like agreed upon. You think you're asking something that's like widely agreed upon or common sense, and it just isn't.
No, I understand that ethics is determined by society and environmental. My point is I think that ethical standards that are determined by society and environmental completely shift through the times. That's why in 2001 it was commonly known that gay marriage was not a thing and was not accepted in almost every single Western nation. And then post 2001 it's much more common. And even gay adoption was even a thing for the last 20 years or before 20 years ago. So it's like these things just shift so quickly, and then to determine that someone's a bigot because they haven't shifted with society, I think it's just astronomical.
I would 20 years after slavery, if you were to say that you were still in favor of slavery, I'd call you a bigot too.
But here's the thing:
Catch up. Time to catch up.
But think about like Presbyterians and like Quakers, right? Which is what my family was growing up. Quakers were completely against slavery. They were ones who were abolitionists, right? That's why when I say that, like, if you allow society to determine your ethics, you are the one who usually probably supported slavery. You're the one who probably who just allows society to shift.
Your ethical framework is entirely flawed. Your base assumption is one that doesn't correlate. The issue with incest is that you're family. That's the issue. Kellett was right.
But why is it your family? Why is it the issue that
You
you're
are-
not saying anything other than nothing? You're saying that
No,
my family. Why would that
I'm
be an issue?
being very specific. You just don't like the specificness, which is fine.
Why would it be a problem if it was my family? Can someone explain why that would be the problem? Again, I am not for incest. I want to make that very clear. I'm against incest in all form of fashion. But if you're saying the problem is because of your
The
family,
answer
why?
is because it's your family. You don't fuck your family. There is a historical norm that you don't fuck your family. If you do, you end up like some of the Egyptian dynasties. That's the issue. There's been an admonition against incest for thousands of years. And it's because you're fucking your family, right? The reason I think your framework is flawed is because you're equating that societal and historical issue with two people who aren't related to each other but are the same sex getting married. There is no issue in society for that. Now, there was an issue in the 40s, certainly, but it was an issue of people not being out. It didn't mean people weren't gay. Again, gay people have been here for thousands of years. Like it's not like.
And for thousands of years they weren't accepted. I'm confused.
It's not like we're turning people gay with the frogs, for example. Right? Like sometimes that happens. It is what it is. It's been on the planet for a long time. Nobody in this conversation is asking you to morally accept that as a religious issue. We're simply saying the two don't equate. Maybe there is a better example we might be able to use. Could you think of one that is maybe more applicable?
Well, again, you're talking about reproduction. The reason why society was against incest, which actually society wasn't against incest for thousands of years. Look at every single king and monarchy were mostly incest, and society was for that. And that actually wealthier
Public didn't practice incest.
no, that's not true. Wealthier families would perform incest to be like the monarch. The poor families.
And let's be real, royal families and the rich were not very much in antiquity. They simply weren't.
I understand. I'm just trying to lay that your point's flawed. Which number one is that homosexuality can exist for thousands of years, but was not a societal acceptance for thousands of years. It's still not a majority acceptance in the world. It's only
No. It's not accepted in the West, and it's not accepted in more conservative countries. In ancient Greece and ancient Rome, it was perfectly fucking accepted. In ancient Persia,
homosexuality marriage was not accepted.
Hold on. Let me jump in this. So, Keegan, are you getting your position here based on your Christian beliefs? Is that where you're deriving this from?
Yeah, that's where my ethical framework is, yes.
Okay, so I can find the sections of the Bible that reference this stuff, which, by the way, one of them comes from Leviticus, which was a book from a religion that predates the religion that you practice. There might even be a different, perhaps I would argue a more important interpretation that would be given by the people that the first 5 books of what you would refer to as the Bible. So when you look in, let's say, Leviticus, for example, I think 1822 would support your claim that God finds homosexuality to be detestable and that it would be against the laws, right? That these moral laws. But however, in Leviticus, the same book that you would get this law from, it also forbids you from wearing clothing that's woven from 2 different types of cloth. And I'm just kind of curious, as I look at your photograph, I'm looking at this close, and I'm not an expert, but I will take that image and I'll run it through an AI program.
You don't need to, Roger.
No, hold on.
It is too.
Well, so here's the thing. If sin is sin, and your desire is to not sin, I would make the argument that you wearing cotton polyester T-shirts is just as bad in God's eyes as homosexuality.
Well, two things. Number one is there is, and I've heard Jews also discuss this, which is there's something called natural law compared to your Judaic law, but we're not under the same standards of what Leviticus has taught.
Then why would you hold on?
Because Romans says that sexual depravity includes homosexuality, and this is taught in every single major Christian church, and that verse is not. It hasn't been.
Got it. Well, but you're aware of what Jesus said in order to get to heaven, what you have to do, right?
Yeah, I do.
Are you against gay people?
No.
Is that how you got to heaven?
No, actually, what Christ said was, Christ said, if you want eternal life, you simply just have to love people and you have to love God. And I don't see. If
That's where did you? I'm so sorry. What? That's not what it says.
Well,
don't take my position and lie on it.
Well, hold on. Hold on. First of all, I will read it to you, since clearly you're unfamiliar. I would make this prediction here. I would bet and I don't know how you spend your time, but considering you spend so much of your time obsessing about gays, I would imagine that you probably don't read your Bible as much as I've read your Bible. And so I will happily read it to you. if you're unfamiliar with this text.
Yes, please read it. That says that
Yeah,
you
let me go.
love others
Let me
and love
go.
God, and that's
Let me
the
go
way.
grab your Christian Bible and read to you what you don't understand. Let me go grab it.
Keegan, I think you're a prime example of why we need stricter separations of church and state. Prime example.
Well, sure, but and you can make that case, of course, but just so everyone knows, while he gets it, I know my verses. John 14:6 is the most famous verse. Everyone should know this. I am the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father except through me, Jesus Christ. That's how you get to heaven. If you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That's the only thing. That's the only requirement to get to heaven, is believing in Jesus Christ, that he died and rose again, and that he was the Messiah. That's all it takes. It's not loving God. It's not loving others. All it takes is that you have to believe in Jesus Christ.
Are you familiar with Matthew 22:36 through 40?
I am.
Okay, so I'll read it to you. I'll read it aloud for the room that doesn't read the Bible. Teacher, which of these great commandment in your law? And he said to him, you shall love your Lord, your God, with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. So what he's instructed is those are the two things that you must do.
No, that had nothing to do with salvation. That's what you get wrong. Those are commandments that we were called to follow. But it had nothing to do with your salvation, which you made the claim it did.
And I'll back that up here in a second. But here's my question for you, because there's a certain brand of Christianity that seems to be obsessed with sexual orientation, specifically homosexuality. If you were to run the entire Bible through AI and say, hey, what does God tell you the most to not do? And I'm guessing you don't know this because homosexuality is referenced 3 times in the Bible. 3 times. A lot of books, a lot of stuff. What the number one thing that he talks about is, what the Bible talks about, is that you shouldn't be angry, right? And this anger and this discrimination that people have towards people that choose a particular lifestyle that you don't want, the obsession on this, if you were to read your Bible, if you were to listen to what Jesus says is most important, then you would just focus on loving people and not trying to take their rights away.
Do you think if Jesus was alive, let me just ask this question for you. If you think Jesus was alive, and of course he would not do this because he did not come to be the king of the king in the way that we see a king. But let's say if Jesus was alive, do you think that he would agree with the statement that gays should be able to adopt? You think so?
Yep.
You guys think Jesus would?
Yes, 100%.
Well, hold on. Here's the thing that I would point out is that if when Jesus was asked what's the most important thing, and he says to love God, to love people, I think what he would do is he would pull all of the people aside and obsess on discriminating against people that happen to be homosexual and say, hey, I'm not caught up on this issue. Why are you so caught up on this issue?
That's a good answer.
I mean, I think he was caught up on that issue. Doesn't specifically say that marriage between a man and a woman?
Not in the Old Testament. I mean, not exactly.
I'm not familiar with any religion, but I thought that's what
In antiquity, men had sex with other men all the time, and and nobody had a concept of homosexuality the way that we conceive of it today. It was like a normal part of certain kinds of cultures. Marshall mentioned the Greeks, and that's how to understand Leviticus. Leviticus is saying don't upend the social structure. It doesn't say don't be gay.
Well, let me ask you this, Keegan. Would you advocate for restricting the rights of people that have done other quote unquote sexually immoral acts? So let's say if somebody, let's say a couple were together and they had
Let's say the president. Let's say the president.
Let's say a couple had sex prior to their marriage. They then get married, and then they go and they fill out adoption paperwork. Are you going to then say that this heterosexual married couple that was sexually immoral by having sex before marriage, would you then hold this standard that they should not be able to adopt?
No, again, not based off of the standard. Again, my standard of for adoption is again just mainly based off of what a mother and father is. But ethically, if I was living like I guess like a theocracy, right? I was living in like we were under a priesthood. I would say that I mean they would have to confess that they've repented for these sins. But I mean we don't live under that, so now I don't have an ethical problem. Or a legality problem of it. So, but what's really interesting about the way that Christianity is spoken about, which is that the number one thing, right? We have to remember, one of my favorite stories of Jesus was when he confronted the woman who was about to be stoned to death for committing adultery, and when the men came to stone, he said, "Okay, whoever has committed no sin, throw the first stone." Right? The woman's facing death. He's like, "You all have done some of the worst things as well. Like let us not judge thee and put her to death for this." Right? Even though again this was based off of Judaic law. And so he said, we're not going to stone her. And they decide not to stone her. And so he sits there and he keeps writing what he was writing in the sand. And he turns to the woman and he says, "Now go and sin no more." Right? I think that people forget the religion that Christianity believes in, which is that I love gay people. I truly do. I know that maybe you guys don't think I do. I love them. But again, I'm not going to advocate for anyone to be living in sin. And what I believe that they are doing is sinful. Again, based off of Romans. Based off of Galatians, and sure you can also say Leviticus, but I understand that you want to make the basis of it's Judaic versus natural law, what that is. But yeah, that's all.
So did we solve this? Did we get to an answer here? If the question of the room is sexual orientation determined at birth, anybody want to talk about that?
Yeah, I don't think we got an answer to that.
I didn't want to be in the center of the room.
What we got is an illustration of, depending on where you fall on the answer, the implications of that, right? And I think folks who think like Keegan will say that, and my guess is Keegan thinks it is determined. If he's going to have these restrictions, Keegan, you can answer. If you're going to have these restrictions, then it sounds like you think it is determined at birth. And that's why what gives you the right to actually make those restrictions, right? But if it's a choice, you could pray the gay away, right?
Exactly, you could pray it away. It's not determined at birth.
But you think it's not determined at birth?
You could pull the gay. That's a.
Right. I mean, pray the gay away is abuse, but sure.
We gotta open up the camps again.
Democrats, Florida.
Which we thought that was so detrimental, right? We're putting a bunch of gay children together again. Just
Democrats fucking chemtrails.
I think the irony will be when you have a gay kid and they want to adopt somebody.
Is that a threat to you?
It's not a threat. I think that would be a delicious irony for your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, Keegan, how would you handle that if your child, male or female, came to you and said, "Hey, I'm gay"? What would you say to your child?
I would, I mean, I would tell them I love them,
Can you hear me?
and they would probably already know, because I would teach them that
Hello?
I believe it's wrong, and so I would say that I believe
Hello?
that you're wrong, you're living in sin. Probably treat them like someone who is going through like drug abuse or going
Hello?
through alcoholism, just something that
Dr.
like,
Bruda.
you know, it's very, very sad, and I probably wouldn't want you around my household, but I love you, and whenever you want to get coffee or you want to go out and go do something, like I'm here with you as a father, but I'm against what you're doing. I wouldn't go to the wedding and support it. I wouldn't show them that I'm for the union.
Keegan, what would you say is the most repetitious sin that you commit?
Probably either lying or envy. Very envious of others at times, or lying, of course, just small white lies here and there.
What do you think? What do you think the God that you pray to thinks about your sin?
I mean, he hates it. It's all sin. Luckily, the forgiving and graceful God, and I repent almost daily.
Do you think that he thinks of your sin the same way that he thinks of other sins that you're not?
Without a doubt. But again, my sin is repented. Like your sin is not repented. That's why you would be damned to hell, I believe, right? Because I have repented sin. That's the difference.
Well, to repent is not just to confess. You have to actually turn away from it. Are you suggesting that you're no longer lie?
Without a doubt, I do think that my will is to lie deliberately. Again, I don't lie deliberately. If that's what you're asking about. But white lies tend to happen, and those are the ones that have to be dealt with. Paul even talks about this. That I'm a man who repents and doesn't want to deliberately sin, but I still do. Why am I a fallen man? This is the great depravity that we must deal with.
So what do you think is worse? Adults making consensual decisions to have sex with each other, or the act of deceiving people through falsehoods, otherwise known as lies?
Again, through the eyes of a Christian framework, every sin's the same.
Got it.
But I mean, but I'll tell you this: I would probably say that deceiving someone, in my eyes, just maybe as a person, I would say it's more wrong. But then I would also say that gays are lying to themselves. So I could make a even bigger argument that they're living in two cities.
What lie are they telling?
That they're not committing sin. I guess you could have gay Christians like, I'm committing sin, but I don't care. Which then just would...
Well, it would only matter if the person accepted your framework of ethics, right?
Yeah, but then they're rejecting God, which is the, without a doubt, way worse than lying, is rejecting God.
So is homosexuality as wrong as telling a lie?
Say that, I'm so sorry, I didn't get what you were trying to ask.
I ask if homosexuality is wrong as telling a lie. It's the same thing.
Based on the framework of God, yes. God would see it as the same law.
Well, that's not a biblical view.
Yeah. I mean, you can explain it.
Well, sure. I mean, if they were, I look from a Christian standpoint, in my best understanding, right? The law doesn't matter. You don't have to observe the law, right? That would include all the laws, right? There is no obligation in the 613 commandments for Christians. So I find your position to be splitting that, too clever to be useful. Some of the laws are here, they're not the ritual ones, not the ethical ones, blah, blah, blah. You want to make these kinds of distinctions that the Old Testament itself doesn't make, right? And just to put it on the nose, right? There is no passage in the Hebrew Bible that says lying is an abomination. It does say that about male sex. So I think you'd have to do a lot of gymnastics to try to figure out that lying and gay sex is the same kind of sin.
And furthermore, you have more heterosexual couples living in sin. How many heterosexual couples are out there engaging in premarital sex, having babies before marriage? I mean, if it goes without saying, sure, I don't know any verse in the Bible where Jesus directly addresses homosexuality, but I know there are verses where he talks about the man and the woman's role as husband and wife and procreating, right? And, throughout time, we see a lot of straight couples, who are so-called Christians, don't adhere to what Jesus in the Bible expects of them or commands of them. We live in sin by fornicating, having multiple partners. I don't, spreading STDs, I wouldn't call it a sin, but you're certainly not honoring your body and the bodies of others when you're having unprotected sex. So, I mean, who's really sinful here, right? I dare say that most straight people who condemn homosexuals are probably living in sin. They're probably having premarital sex and having babies out of wedlock.
Mojo, great topic.
Yeah, that's what I do. So, Anne, what's your take? Is sexual orientation determined at birth?
I'm eating. I'm listening. I'm listening very carefully.
Interesting. I think that we should be careful when we lean on religion to help reinforce our worldview in a way that we want other people to act. It's my understanding, and again, I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Jew, I'm certainly not a Muslim, not after what I've learned about their prophet, but even if I practiced any of these religions, it would be a personal relationship between me and God, which, by the way, I believe in a God. I just don't make truth claims like some of you guys do. And maybe you guys are in such good communication that you know what God wants out of you. Maybe that's true. I won't argue that. But I can't understand why anybody would then take that personal relationship that they have with God and then try to project that what other people should do. I would imagine that the God that creates the universe and creates the people in it and creates the order in which things relate with one another, I've yet to see any text that would be useful to say that you should worry about other people rather than worrying about yourself. In fact, it seems like the one thing that these things all have in common is that A, God exists, and B, God loves you, and C, God wants a relationship with you. That's what it seems to happen. But there's a lot of people that tend to then take their personal relationship and then say, I am going to go judge others based on my belief. And I think that's a huge fucking problem. I think that's a huge fucking problem. I think that when you see it to its extreme, it plays out that you will literally kill people that don't believe what you believe. And I think we should be very, very careful with taking our beliefs to a place where you want to hold other people accountable for your belief system. If you don't want to do the things that your biblical text tells you that God would be irritated with, then don't do those things. That's your choice. In fact, any of those things, if you decide that you want to follow the law and you want to not wear polyester shirts because you think that would be pleasing to God, then do that. But I don't see anybody advocating for laws that say that we should outlaw cotton polyester shirts because we know how God feels about that. Nobody's doing that. What they're doing is they're picking the sins that they don't themselves participate in, and they're saying those are the ones that we should worry about. It's very
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
Well, and if anyone else wants to go, I can interact.
Hi, Keeg.
Hey, Ann. If no one else wants to, again, I don't. This is Roger's room. I feel like I've said myself too much, but I do disagree with Roger. It's been fine.
Well, I think the fact that people are pushing back on the things that you're saying creates the necessity for you to be able to respond, and I don't typically like to center the type of things that you're saying, but we're all guilty of, criticizing your take, and so back and forth is justified.
Sounds good. So I actually believe, as a Christian, I am to worry about others, and this is based off of both. I think actually every single Christian, we even have a denomination, evangelical Christians, evangelizing to others, and I believe that we're called. I think it's Philippians 2, which is that let each of you look like out for just not your own interest, but the interest of others, which is, again, this is like the idea of compassion, care, service, empathy. And again, if I have compassion for someone, I'm gonna, and if they're again living in sin based off of my framework, of course, I would want to call them out with love. Of course, I think like the whole preaching on the street, telling everyone you're going to burn in hell if you keep living this way is not loving. I don't think it brings anyone further to Christ. But again, I want to advocate for a federal system that will legalize sinful behavior. But also, there's also the Galatians, I think 6 talks about bearing others' burdens as your own. And so that's another really, really deep, complex thought, which is that the burden that Roger is going through should be the burden that I go through. But again, this is a Christian framework that I think it can, in a way, coexist with a non-religious society. And again, this is probably a deeper conversation that we've gone off the rails, Roger. But I feel like when we talk about sexual orientation, it ends up being this way because usually the people who are against same-sex is usually religious people, and usually stemming from two religions, but Muslims don't debate on this app.
So let me ask you this: in Muslims do debate. They were on the app last night. We were talking about the Prophet Muhammad and his, yeah. Anyways, I don't know. Are you familiar with James 4, 11 and 12?
I mean, most likely. I can't think of the version.
Yeah. Well, let me read it, and we'll see if we get anybody's thoughts on this. It says, "Brothers and sisters, do not slander one another. Anyone who speaks against a brother or sister or judges them speaks against the law and judges it. There is only one lawgiver and judge, the one who is able to save and destroy. But you, who are you to judge your neighbor?"
Yes, slandering, just so everyone understands, so they can get the full context. Slandering is speaking false or damaging words to another, with the intent of harming their reputation. So,
Do you believe that God wants you to be judging?
we're judging on the basis of slander, which
Can you point me to a verse where he's transferred his ability to judge people to you, where he's handed that authority?
yeah, I mean, there's something called righteous judgment in Christianity, which actually, like, the whole idea of, like, first of all, we make judgment decisions every single day. So I guess, like, I mean, I judge whether or not I'm going to wear tennis shoes or boots to work, right? It's pretty hot today, I wear tennis shoes. That was a judgment call. Good judgment call, by me, as I should say. But there's something called righteous judgment, which is, like, making decisions. And this is John 7, I think 20 or 24.
Yeah.
So, like, do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment.
Yeah.
So,
And again, people can pick and choose. It's a big book. Why don't you speak to this one? Romans 14, 10 through 13. Then why do you judge your brother and sister, or why do you treat them with contempt? For we will all stand before God's judgment seat. Therefore, let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, make up your mind not to put any stumbling blocks or obstacles in the way of a brother or sister. So it very clearly says, stop passing judgment. Why would you then deny that the Bible instructs you to stop judging?
I was on mute. Yeah, again, we pass judgment on everyone. These are good judgments and righteous judgments. We are called to righteously judge. I understand that you're pointing that, again, by condemning someone with contempt. These are like with slander, with contempt. These are, you're judging with a sinful nature upon it. Righteous judgment is based on truth, with humility and honesty, and then corrects with love, and it's fear-led, and it's supposed to be fair. That's like righteous judgment.
So you're suggesting that you believe that the Christian Bible calls on people to judge and not God? Because I can read to you at least 7 times in the Bible where it says that God is supposed to judge.
Again, the two ones that you stated were incorrect ways on how to judge, with slander, with contempt, right? I'm gonna read several of these, and I want you to find the through line in all of these things. Matthew 7, 1 and 2. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Okay, that's number 1. Luke 6:37. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. John 8:7. Let anyone who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. Romans 14, 10 through 13, I already read to you there, and I already read to you James 4, 11 and 12. Those are 5 separate scriptures. I can reread those if you guys needed me to. Those are 5 separate scriptures that are commanding you to not judge others. All right, and I'll explain this to both Roger and I feel like the room. This is how Christians are told to judge and not to judge. There's hypocritically, which is Matthew 7:1, which is a hypocritical judge. There's then condemning someone's heart or their eternity, telling them that they will not be into the kingdom of heaven. That's James 4:11. But then there's judgment that we're supposed to discern truth from error, which is John 7. Again, what I read 20 something, which is do not judge according to appearance, but judge with the righteous judgment. And then there's Galatians 6, which is the correct of other believer. To other believers, which is a man has overtaken in any trespass. You who are spiritually restored, such and one a spirit with gentleness. Right? This is again Christians are responsible to lovely correct the individual, the fellow believer. And then the third one is still one of you guys, which is protecting the church. This is another judgment that we're called to do. For what I've done is with judgment of also who are the outside. Do not judge those who are on the inside. This is Paul commanding the Corinthians to judge them from the church. So we have three different types of judgment that we're called to do. We have two different types of judgments that we're not called to do, which is condemning someone's eternity, meaning that whether or not they're going to make it to heaven. I can't determine that other than someone saying that they're not a believer. Then that's where you determine that's where evangelism comes into. But if someone says they're a Christian but they sin, I cannot say that they are not going to go to heaven because I do not know their hearts. Hypocritically, I cannot judge someone for the sin that I commit because that would be hypocritical. But again, the judgment that we are supposed to make is the one where we discern truth from error, which is a large one. And that's what I think a lot of Christians are trying to do. But sometimes not the most public way of this. But that is the Christian belief, and every single pastor would agree that there's righteous judgment, non-righteous judgment. And if I understand
I hear what you say, that you're definitely cherry picking the scriptures that you believe to be most important.
read anything anti-Semitic?
So that was not being.
So can you write anything anti-Islam?
I thought he was less of a threat, maybe when it comes to like gun rights and that kind of shit. But even the gun rights stuff, they had an ample opportunity to pass the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act, which I won't even get into what those are. But of course, that got tossed to the wayside. They're like Trump and these Republicans, they're so fucking disingenuous. They're the most Huh?
Where's the wall?
Yeah, the wall's largely built.
Where I live, actually, mister.
Is it actually finished?
I can beat the wall in like 10 or 15 minutes from my house.
The walls, yeah, mostly finished. There's parts you can't build a wall because it's like literally you can't drive there.
Exactly.
What do the walls look like? I mean, how are they? What are they made of?
They're probably like, I'd say a good, I don't know, 20, 30
They're the
feet.
same kinds of walls you had in Arizona, right? They're those
They're like really
tall metal I-beams.
Yeah.
And there are, like, I don't know about Arizona, but there are spaces in ours, because the wall isn't supposed to function as some sort of like medieval or Roman remnant. It's supposed to function as a funnel, which is a weird
Basically.
way to, yeah, it's a weird way to think
Yeah,
about it.
they're basically the wall. All it does is slow. Anybody who's committed to getting across the border will do it. If you're a young, fit male, there's a way you grab onto the I-beams and then you push yourself up with your feet. And you see, there's videos of people doing this with ease all the time. But you can also drill through it. You can or saw through it. You can do all kinds of stuff. But it's basically what? Goddamn.
You get a tunnel under it.
There's an expression. There's an expression that a law couldn't keep them honest. Right? If someone's determined enough, they're going to get in. But it's about slowing them down. It's about making it that little bit harder so that they can maybe go funnel through an easier point, which is more patrolled and surveilled, and therefore they can conserve their resources. So, but they can build it. Like that's what Steve Bannon did. They built a wall where the U.S. government would over a really elevated terrain, and so it can be built. Even in those worse areas. That's what the whole build the whole part was about.
But no, you have like super steep, like literally, you'd have. I guess
I saw the video. Go look at the build the wall.
But wouldn't it be better to like patrol the border with guards because like people can get right?
Yeah, they're moving to mainly like electronic. They're moving to largely to like electronic surveillance and stuff, which is way better to begin with.
Yeah.
With electronic surveillance, that means like cameras, that means drones, that means aerostats, which are big blimps.
The problem is that one policy a new administration can come in.
Just let me finish. They are using active border patrol, whether they be in trucks or whether they're on horses, depending on what part of the train you're on. They are utilizing walls, and they're utilizing ground-based sensors which indicate vibrations. They're using all of that in conjunction. So it's not like they're only doing the wall. They're doing the wall plus everything else.
It's one of the things that
personnel are policy related. They come and go, right? A new administration coming and can
can kind of take away that funding. If they build a wall, it would be extremely unpalatable to the taxpayer if the new administration decided to take it down. So it will be permanent.
There's a lot of disingenuous shit. Like the one thing, I've known this for years, but you'll notice a lot of people say we need to build that wall. The fentanyl's poisoning the kids. Kids are dying. We need to build the wall. But a lot of but what they don't tell you is that nearly all of the fentanyl, the cocaine, the heroin, the methamphetamine, that almost all of it comes to an official port of entry. It's like literally hidden in cargo or hidden within the compartment within an automobile or a truck. That's how they bring it in. They don't do it by fucking backpacks over a goddamn wall.
I thought the majority of fentanyl came from China.
With the precursor chemicals, yeah. They taught the Mexicans how to make it.
Okay,
so the Mexicans make it now.
Okay.
Yep. I think Keegan's a MAGA person, so we usually get along. But Keegan, what do you think of this big bill?
Whoa, wait, Buffett, I do not like this bill that's going to have losers underneath. What's wrong with
This is a trashy bill. I mean, it's just literally, so it's going to put us further in debt. Yet, what is it doing for Americans? Well, I mean, it's going to yank a bunch of people health insurance. It's going to have hospitals in rural areas, which are very needed. We've already had a problem with a lot of them shutting down. These are going to go. You're probably going to lose more rural health care. And for what? We're spending more money for this. And you had Trump in his serving the drive-through at McDonald's and driving a garbage truck, basically saying, oh, I care about you everyday Americans, basically poor Americans. And look what he did to them.
Is it slowing the growth of the debt?
No, I don't think so.
Not that I didn't see
I don't think so, Norm. I think it's spending more money. I thought that was the contention of this bill, that it's spending.
Everybody spends more money, but there's a rate and there's a net amount. So if the rate is slow, that could be seen as a small victory.
Well, okay, so what I've got from it, number one, is that it's introducing new deductions, which I'm in favor of. It limits taxes on tips over time. I get overtime, so I'm pretty excited. Grants $6,000 for older adults, and also increases for children, auto loans, and so those things I think are good. I'm excited that it's going to give $400 billion to border control, and constructing 700 miles of the new border wall. But then this is where I've also seen, which I'm wondering where we're going to gain a bunch of money, because maybe I'm reading the bill wrong. I thought we're actually going to get more money back into our we're going to have less.
No, it expends more money than it takes in.
Well, I thought that it's cutting $1.2 trillion for Medicaid SNAP programs.
Over about.
And you want to do that?
Over about a 10-year period. So it's not going to happen immediately.
Well, see, that's the kind of the thing I have a problem with, Keegan, is that at the end of the day, the people who receive, for example, Medicaid, your life it's it's already hard enough if you're even on Medicaid to begin with. And so why are you just made their life that much harder?
Well, I don't know why you're saying that. I saw that they're giving $50 billion for the next 5 years
That's only gonna slow down the bleeding, because you're gonna have basically that's gonna be given to the hospitals, because obviously once Medicaid people are off of Medicaid, they're going to the hospitals aren't going to be making as much money, and we've already had a problem with rural hospitals having to close. But what it does, that $50 billion doesn't do, is it doesn't give the poor people health care so that they can get their medications. so that they can have any kind of preventative care, so that they can, and Medicaid covers like super basic shit. It it's not. I don't know.
Well, I think Medicaid. Well, I think the reason why a lot of people are upset with Medicaid is that it's been exploited, right? It's costing taxpayers. It's costing taxpayers over $50 billion a year on illegal immigrants.
No, that's false. Because
It's not true.
No, I can tell you it's not. No, you got it wrong. You got it. You're talking to somebody who worked in hospitals even over 20 years ago. You're correct. There was, like in Arizona, we had the Medicaid. It's called Access, and they're these white insurance cards. Now, legal immigrants, they would have a bright yellow access card, and that was basically just showed that it was purely federally funded, and it's to be used only at like an emergency room. And part of the reason why they do that is because emergency rooms can't refuse treatment if you present with symptoms. So basically, it was making it so that the hospitals and the community weren't having to eat the cost of these legal immigrants seeking like health care. But at the end of the day, that's not really solving anything. It's just going to pass the financial burden on to hospitals. Now, if you're gonna actually solve the fucking problem, you start at the root, which is like, okay, you have way too many undocumented immigrants doing this shit.
Yeah. Just Brian, just one second, sorry.
No, the bill cuts Medicaid for Americans.
Dean, we don't allow immigrants.
No, hold on, Dean. No, let Dean go.
Yeah, just want to provide some slow stats out here, but looking here is for one, Medicaid is you can't file for Medicaid as an undocumented immigrant, so the immigrants are not eligible for Medicaid. However, there's emergency Medicaid spending, which undocumented immigrants can receive. But this is only a small fraction of overall Medicaid spending. Looking at, from 2023 data, only 0.4% of total Medicaid spending went towards emergency care for undocumented immigrants, which amounts to roughly $3.8 billion out of $900 billion in total spending. So there is a cost there, but it's about 0.5% of overall Medicaid spending goes to undocumented immigrants for emergency-related care.
That's correct. You can't enroll in Medicaid without a Social Security card, a Social Security number. So an undocumented person they don't have that. And even if
they can get that really easy.
Oh God. Well, this is the thing. They have to. Have you ever applied for Medicaid? Because I have. You have to furnish the social security card, and then what's on your social security card has to match what's also on your driver's license. Remember, now we have real IDs, so I don't know how these people are. I don't know how they're going to go and get, because you have to show proof of who you are when you apply for Medicaid. So you have to have a social security card in your name. You have to have a driver's license in your name. Sometimes they even ask for a birth certificate. And I've been asked to turn that in when I had Medicaid, because I lost my insurance. I got laid off, and I got a new job later and got employer paid insurance. But it's really difficult if you don't have a social to apply for Medicaid. I don't understand. Like, they're going to check, and then you have to have like a bill or some type of
No, you can't.
He just told you. Hold on, let me finish. He just told you it's only 0.4%. The rest of the people on Medicaid are U.S. citizens. So what are you?
Okay. 0.4 was people going to the ER, right?
Yeah. So
but the thing is, though, is that this bill does nothing to stop people from going to the illegals from going to the ER. Because at the end of the day, the law is that if you present yourself to an ER and you have symptoms, they have to treat you. So no matter what, somebody is going to have to foot that bill. Now I get, obviously the hospitals are going to have to foot that bill, which it's going to, especially in places like Phoenix, Arizona, where I live, that could be that's going to be pretty fucking burdensome.
Why do they?
Yeah, what we're gonna create is competitive.
Well, the law is they have to be treated.
Well, they have to be treated, but like even without the.
Hey, immigrant! Hey, immigrant! We don't allow you to speak about this.
Why are you simping for more than
immigrant? So, well, number one is people understand that the reason why we're no, I didn't vote for Trump. I don't like Trump. But the idea that like some of these stuff isn't a good thing, like what are we doing? But my point is that number one is this bill was going to increase spending because we were going to default on most of our loans. We had to increase our debt by $5 trillion if we weren't going to default on our loans. Like those things actually matter, and that would have happened under any president. And again, this is just because of inflation. What's amazing about it?
Keegan, who did you vote?
I didn't vote in the presidential election.
Who did you vote in your primary?
Looking for Trump. That's what it is.
I mean, at the end of the day, why do we have this? Why do we have this? And it's called big, like a big, beautiful bill. So why do we have such a big bill that puts us more in debt? And I guess there's the wealthy are gonna, they'll be a little bit happy with it, but you're just gonna shit on your very large voting base, which is gonna be.
How many times did I tell you the conservative
lower middle class people?
How many times did I tell you this?
No, I know. Conservatives are, like, most quote-unquote conservatives are fucking retards.
The brain dead, the whole brain dead.
The very people that voted for this bill are going to end up losing their Medicaid and their SNAP.
I mean, I'm not down, I don't really agree with the bill, but the Medicaid argument, I mean, there's definitely people cheating the system.
Oh, God.
Spend $900 billion a year on it. I mean, you gotta start to trim the fat somewhere. At least
So when you say
people and try and make them prove that they really need it.
We need to prove they need
okay,
it.
when you say cheating the system, the majority of people on Medicaid are elderly, because if they don't have enough assets and they have to go into a nursing home, Medicaid pays for their care. It pays for elderly people's nursing home care. Is that correct, Pepe? And a lot of disabled people, like people with like physically disabled, mentally, like autism and all that kind of stuff. Like if you have a kid that is like mentally, Medicaid pays for their health care because they can't work. So this idea that there's all these people just running around scrounging off the system is not true. Like 60% of people on Medicaid actually work.
I just said
you're spinning this narrative. You're spinning this.
There's always
but you're spinning this narrative. Yeah, there is a little bit, but that doesn't justify kicking 7.6 million people off Medicaid that previously had it. That doesn't make sense. Yeah.
How many people are in there?
Well, it would make sense if it's money.
Why do you? I would like to know real quick, Pepe. I didn't hear one thing though. I want a little clarity on it. They said the energy cost is going to go up by like what, $400 a year? Can somebody that knows a little bit more about the bill explain that to me?
I'm not familiar with that particular.
No, because that's what concerns me the most. I mean, fuck the Medicare and all that stuff. Like, it doesn't matter.
Well, what about the debt?
Somebody said energy costs are gonna go up by.
It doesn't matter. America prints its own money. That is not a problem. You don't understand.
It does matter if people have to pay $400. Let me look it up.
The only thing that matters is the debt.
I'm talking about debt. The debt crisis. I get the whole $400.
Here's the two things. Here's the two things about that bill that I don't really care about much. Like okay, I don't qualify for Medicare. Neither does anybody in my family. And every time like 9 years ago, I actually went down there to try to actually get some for me and my two kids. As a struggling fucking husband with two kids, right? And they said, fuck you. They said, I make too much money. And at that time, looking at California, I'm like, what the fuck do you mean I make too much money? What, huh? Right? So I didn't respect that system to begin with. You basically had to be a leech to get anything from that place, or you had to be a finesser or some sort of a liar or bullshitter, right? Or you just had to be really broke, right? So therefore, if you were any sort of a type person or any sort of a trying to get somewhere in life or not want to be broke for the rest of your life type of person, then you weren't going to qualify. I'm sorry. It was only for bums. It is what it is. I'm sorry, right? So as far as Medicare getting taken away from people, cool. Go to Blue Cross Blue Shield like I had to. So be like, fuck it.
I think.
So I'm reading about it. It's saying that
real quick, I think we might be getting it mixed up. Medicare is 65 and older and certain people. Medicaid is the one for just low income. I mean,
yeah.
Correct.
You can cheat the
Correct.
system and work under the table and get Medicaid.
No, Medicare is for the elderly. Medicare is for 65 and older. But the elderly also. Hold on. But people who are elderly also have Medicaid as well. Medicaid kicks in and pays for their nursing home care, pays for their.
Fuck them. That's the generation that fucked us over to begin with. And put us in this situation.
Wake that up, Uncle.
I don't give a shit about the boomers and the silent generation and Gen X. Fuck them. That's the same
So it says that. So it says that
that's the same generation that raised where. So I'm saying last thing of Pepe, and I'm gonna stop saying stuff, right? That's the same generation that when I was in elementary school in California, my teacher in elementary school was telling me that when you guys get to retirement age, you're probably not gonna get Social Security, but you're gonna pay into it your whole life. That's the same generation that fucked me over as a millennial. So fuck them. I don't give a fuck about them if they die from whatever else.
So I'll say this. I
from their Jamaican
I don't give a shit about their fucking gout and diabetes.
Okay. So I did look it up. It said, it's projected to increase. The ratepayer bill is increasing by up to $400 annually in the next 5 years due to the bill's cuts to clean energy incentives.
What?
And then that was from the big
Clean energy incentives like
Grits reported that it'd be $250 to $415 increase. So the energy prices are going to go up. Winning, amazing. America first.
There is a section in that bill specifically devoted to
That
energy.
is America first.
I think it's in the bottom. Part of the table of contents.
No, I mean, this bill's trash. It's just going to saddle what? I mean, you think the boomers are bad? I mean, look at what the fuck is this generation doing? They're just going to saddle future generations with more fucking debt.
And then the boomers that passed the bill. The boomers did this bill.
No.
Most people in Congress.
We're getting rid of what the boomers did. I mean, at some point you have to clean this
What's
up.
the age of everybody in Congress? They're boomers.
How are you cleaning it up?
Most of Congress and Senate aren't boomers.
Okay, Gen X, either way, they're not millennials.
Uncle, if you were born in that era, you wouldn't be like them. You'd be totally different.
You would be, Uncle.
I'd be a lot more passionate.
You would be.
I'd be more compassionate,
You wouldn't have been anything.
But the fact is, they've done nothing but fuck us over for the last like 60 years.
And if you were born at the same year as them, you'd be a lot different.
I mean, the problem is though, is I don't know, like as much as the so-called, church-going conservatives love to, they're just fucking trash. So are the, and that's the really other shitty part is a lot of these so-called progressives and I don't know what the fuck you'd even call them on the left are absolutely fucking disastrous and unrealistic. They create more fucking problems than anything, but what we're stuck with is Trump.
One thing is that they don't increase spend as much as Trump.
I know, Trump, he's trash.
What Pepe is really itching to say, he wants to say that 99% of
No, you guys are wrong. The average age in Congress is 58 years old.
That's younger than a boomer.
If you do
That's
say
not a boomer. That's not a
Once again, the boomers. Fuck the boomers.
No, it's not. That's
Gen
not
X.
a boomer. A boomer is born in like 1950.
No,
No, a 50-year-old is a Gen X. A boomer is 74.
That's a lie.
Who cares?
It's not a lie. Google.
58 years old is a boomer, bitch.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Who cares?
Rabbi is the bottom.
You see what you mean about Americans?
Okay, guys, I know this is my fault. This is my fault because you guys are so used to me having my racist troll spaces, and now I'm just kind of being serious. And what's really pissing me off is what I love to do is to argue with the conservatives. But they're not. They're hiding.
I could have sworn I think out for being a conservative.
I'm not a conservative. I'm a right winger. I'm not conservative.
Rabbi's gay. Rabbi's gay.
What about Marshall? Marshall, why don't you throw Trump?
Can you deny it?
Rabbi likes to bend over
Marshall, why don't you throw
All
Trump?
right, guys, this isn't one of the troll spaces. So
I'm not trolling. I'm being honest.
I'm not a conservative. I'm really not.
Okay, fine. You're not.
Everybody on here, ask any of the conservative, anybody on conservative Clubhouse. There's a lot of overlap, but they realize that there's like key differences where I just don't agree with them.
But can you, whether you're conservative or not, can you admit that I've been telling all of you motherfuckers that MAGA is a huge scam? And that
You never told me that, so
I never told you the conservatives are actual cucks. I never told you that.